unused temple in Rokugan, there is a peasant who would sit continuously trying to divine everything. I would often pass by and watch him do this. One day, I decided to seek his counsel. Today, I'm going to divinate the possible future designs of the L5r card space. Now, I've heard a few grumbles. Now, the Keeper and Seeker choices, people seem to have issues with. Let's take the line card, for example, the one that political retaliation one. I know that the line cannot play in faction, and people correctly say you can play it out of faction. People seem to take issue with this. No, that's a great thing. Limiting card choices is a great thing. Do not panic. Just because you have one card doesn't mean that you're not going to get another card. So, for example, each clan may receive a Keeper and a Seeker card, not necessarily one or the other. Remember, there's like 6 packs per cycle. I don't know whether they're going to call these saga packs, or I don't know what they're going to call the packs yet. I can't remember the name. But either way, don't expect it to stop with just one Keeper or Seeker card. Don't expect it to be all end all. It will be fine. And while you may not like that there are some cards denied to you, this is a great thing, because there are many issues with the design space when it comes to LCGs, especially bloat. I feel that L5r has been spared most of the critical design failures of FFG previous. Not to say that the games aren't great, the games are amazing. I mean, they're designed well beyond anything I could possibly imagine. So I'm going to be talking to you about this. So if you have issues with not having the right Seeker roles, if you have issues with being locked into one type of role, don't panic. Let me try and bring you on board here. Let me explain to you what you're being spared and what greatness is being bestowed upon you. So I'm on the website here, the 5 Rings DB. So I can't save deck lists on this yet, so I don't know who made this, but congrats and thank you very much. So we'll take a look at the crab here, right? Notice they've got quite a few holdings, because they construct stuff. They're the crab. And what I might admire about them is from the story blurbs, because again I'm just new to L5r for L5r, but from an FFG standpoint, this seems to be the combo faction done right. If I was to say similarities, it would be similar to Wayland in the core set of Netrunner. And let me explain to you what Wayland does. Wayland has something called barriers, which keep the attacking runner out. That's their main function. They're very bland, they're mainly really, really big, and they know a thing of what they were supposed to do from the core set, that is to sacrifice stuff to get credit. So for example, you've got security subcontract here, sacrifice a blocker basically. I'm just gonna assume that you don't know how to play Netrunner, but you sacrifice a blocker and you gain 4 credits, or 4 fate in your case. I mean, this card is never used. It's never used. They have combo cards here, so aggressive negotiation. Once you score an agenda or score a point, so basically the whole point of the game is to score 7 points. So once you score a point, you can use this to search for or tutor any card in your deck and just get to your hand. Again, this card is also never used because scoring points is very time consuming. So imagine how difficult it is for you to break a province. So imagine that you had a card that you could only play after break a province by a certain amount of strength. Not only do you have to break the province, but to break it by a certain amount of strength on top of what you're supposed to do. So you can see how cumbersome that card would be. What I will draw your attention to is this card here called Scorched Earth. Now, don't worry about this card just yet, but this is going to be a very critical. This could be a very critical thing, a very critical design phase that FFG goes through. If you remember in my previous videos, I talked about there being a rush faction, I talked about there being a money faction, talked about there being a combo faction, which is Wayland. I talked about there being a disruptive faction, Anarchs, which hurt themselves to hurt the opponent. Yeah, you're going to see mirrors of these, but I think in L5r they solve the main issue. Now, Wayland is one of the stronger factions outside the core purely because of the Scorched Earth card. As you can see, it deals 4 direct damage when the runner is tagged. Now, tagging is going to be what I'm going to refer to now as a status ailment. For example, the Crane have lots of honor and dishonor effects, which is a status ailment. Think of tagging as being dishonored. So when your opponent is dishonored, you can do 4 direct damage, and the average health is 6. So you do 6 points of damage, you can kill your opponent, let's just say, just on average. It's more complicated than that, but just bear that in mind. So this does 4. Now there are lots of times when your opponent is on 4 health and you can just kill him. So, but just bear that in mind. Status ailment and then kill. That is a popular combo done by this faction. And I'll show you some of the barrier ice. And again, here's the big ice, the big blockers. So you got this one here at 7 strength, 10 cost. This one here at 4 strength, 6 cost. But you have to sacrifice an agenda, or let's say you have to sacrifice a province to bring this card into play. So that could be another thing that happens. You have to sacrifice a province, and then this card comes into play, and it's got a very powerful effect for a cheap cost. Much like the Phoenix card that takes the ring, you'll get your province, you sacrifice your province, let it get broken, and then you can do this powerful effect. So, I mean, again, all echoes of these design philosophies in all lots of games. Let's take a look at Game of Thrones now. The kind of combo-ish faction you got here, I like to think of as the Mortels. Again, they've got this card here called Dawn's Game. So after you win a challenge by 5 or more, you can do this effect where you gain a bunch of power, and you have to get 15 power. So the more strength you gain, X is the number of plot cards you've gone through. So it's a late game card, so you have to time it just right. So if everything lines up and you play this card, you can often win the game in 1 hit. So again, you can just do a kill combination card. Each game has this. There's an apocalyptic card in Conquest which just wipes the board clean and just brings in all its other cards. It's just sick. And the point I'm trying to make here is that each and every game has this. It has Dawn's Game. You had Scorched Earth, and the first thing I want to make clear about L5r is it does not have this card. Sure, the Phoenix have that card I just mentioned that claims the ring if you just break the province in an uncontested match, but it doesn't win the game outright. These cards I just mentioned, Dawn's Game and Scorched Earth, they can win the game outright, and it has happened many a time. The first thing that we are going to see is a card that could literally win the game should you have all 5 rings. It's not going to be a core set card because, again, the balancing issues behind Scorched Earth has had a massive warping effect that the players don't see, but I can feel it. It just warps the entire game because it still warps the game to this very day. There's a second version of Scorched Earth called Boom, and that also warped the game tremendously. Dawn's Game, I imagine, warps Game of Thrones. I know it was it was one of the key cards in the World Championship. So again, it definitely heavily warps the game, because any card that gives you direct power like this in the game just warps the game. I hear the players talk about it all the time. So expect it. Expect a card that says when you if you claim all 5 rings in one one phase or whatever, one round, let's say, you win the game. It's gonna come. I don't know how they're going to balance it. I don't know if it's going to be neutral. I don't know if a faction might have it like Phoenix. I think it'd be a Phoenix card, most likely. But it's coming. That's the first thing I see. Now, the Crane is the status ailment clan. The closest thing to that would be NBN, which delivers tags or dishonor or honor, in whichever way you want to think of it. The point is, this deck delivers status ailments. For example, when you score this point here, if you use this point card, you give them 2 tags, and then you can use those tags to score out points and stuff like that. So it just feeds points off. This blocker here, this Data Raven, gives tags. This card here gives direct tags. So again, this faction is all about status ailments, and that's what the Crane do. It's also got lots of low cost because it's supposed to be poor. I mean, just look at all that low cost. Look at that low cost. And let's have a look at NBN. NBN's all about this low cost. This just about all this low cost stuff. Just except for this one big mother, Tolbooth, the best icing. I don't know why it's got that, but the rest of this stuff is just low cost, one cost. It's just, and they went too far with this because originally it was just mediocre, but then it just went too far. It became far too consistent. So if anything's going to become far too consistent, watch out for this. The sign to watch out for is when you start getting all these cards that rely on you having more honor than your opponent. So for example, if you have a card that can, outside this, that when you start getting all these cards that rely on you having the constraint being that you have more honor than your opponent, that's when things are going to start to have trouble, because that's what happened to NBN. They had all these cards that relied upon tagging, and you could do crazy things. I'll give you an example. Let's just say if you have more honor than your opponent, and you have, let's say you've got more broken provinces, you could fix one of your provinces and break one of theirs. That's how powerful it gets, basically. As long as you have more honor and more broken provinces. Just imagine cards that powerful. That's just crazy. I'm not saying it's going to happen now, but I'm just saying, just wait for all these, when more honor effects happen. It just gets crazy. So that's the only thing I'd say for the Crane. Just watch out for the honor effects, especially the cancellation effects, because when those cancellation effects have the same trigger, then we've got danger. Having lots of cancel effects is fine, but when they've all run on the same thing, that's what you got to watch out for. It's what happened to NBN. It's what happened here. Shaper tends to be very powerful inside the core set. However, one big downfall is the speed. For now, that doesn't seem to be an issue, but as the game goes on, you'll notice that you'll have all the correct tools for the job, but one faction is going to get boosted up and is going to become a speed demon, and the dragon may not be able to keep pace. And then you're just better off just importing dragon cards into a current deck just to make it work. When looking at this guy called Bayushi Shoujo, sorry if I pronounced his name wrong, he reminds you of Jinteki. Basically it's direct damage, or in this case direct dishonor. It can be very potent. In the original Netrunner, I mean, it was one of the weaker factions, along with Anox, which were seen as really weak. They would damage themselves or dishonor themselves to damage the opponent or dishonor the opponent, let's say. And this faction was behind him. They were given a tremendous boost in power, and it's to this day it's virtually impossible to keep Anox in check. So that's going to bring me to my next thing, which is going to be the Unicorn. The Unicorn are the Anox, or the Anox of L5r. So let me just start that again. So Anox was seen as underpowered because basically here's how Anox work. If you get through or break through it, access cards, if you can make successful attacks, you can have devastating effects like hitting multiple things at once, or trashing their or killing their protection directly. And in some cases it causes a snowball effect. You can make them discard cards, and you could consistently, well, if you had enough money, you could repeat that process again. And again, it was still pretty weak because again, you'd need to be able to consistently break through, and you can't always consistently break through because you don't have the best stuff to break through with. And you could, if you could just keep them out a few turns, you could just rush on ahead. Same thing here with the unicorn, which is my clan. I like the unicorn. Again, if you can keep the unicorn out, you can kind of stifle them. However, if they get multiple breaking, if they break a province, they can combo and break another one in the same action, and lead to a devastating snowball effect where multiple rings are your multiple military challenges are lost, you losing your multiple rings claimed, stuff being void and discarded, and then the loss of tempo is just insane. So yeah, then they can ready up and do it again multiple times. What you're going to see from Unicorn is what I expect the same thing to happen to Anarch. You're going to get a lot of inconsequential cards that are not going to do anything unless you make successful province breakings or enemy destruction. Somehow you have to you have to destroy an enemy, but if you destroy an enemy, you destroy an extra one. Something that's going to snowball. That's what I expect to see. And it's going to be one you want to keep your eye on, because like I said, in the beginning, Anarchs were really weak and not well represented. And then FFG pushed the envelope a bit too far and was not able to put them back in the box. And rotation is just now starting to smooth over and fix things. So if you think Breakthrough is balanced now, it is. But imagine that if they successfully broke a province, they could claim 2 rings. Because that's what's going to happen. So imagine that they break a province, claim 2 rings, breakthrough, claim 2 more rings. Not laughing now, are you? I mean, okay, maybe it'll be instead of breaking the province, you claim the 2nd ring, but then they could just keep continuously claim rings. And then when that card I talked about, the one that like wins if you have all 5 rings, comes along, they're going to win the game without having to break a single province. In fact, they'll just win just by attacking one province over and over again. It's not going to be pretty. Just watch out for it. Call me crazy now, but when it happens, just remember who told you.